In 2016, the world was rocked by one of the largest leaks in history. Millions of documents from a single law firm revealed a hidden universe of offshore finance, shell companies, and secretive billion-dollar dealings. The leak, known as the Panama Papers, exposed how politicians, business tycoons, celebrities, and criminal networks used complex structures to hide wealth, avoid taxes, and sometimes launder money. What began as an investigation into a Panama-based law firm quickly escalated into a global scandal, shaking governments, top executives, and financial institutions alike. Today, we take you inside the billion-dollar web of global corruption exposed by the Panama Papers. But what the public never knew is far more scandalous than what was revealed. And the most threatening part of this story is still ahead. Stay with me. But the most shocking part, what the leak didn't reveal, will change the way you see global power forever. And stay with me until the end, because the final revelation exposes the one group the Panama Papers almost protected, and why. The story begins with Mossack Fonseca, a small Panamanian law firm founded in the late 1970s. On the surface, it seemed ordinary, offering standard corporate and legal services. But behind closed doors, the firm specialized in creating offshore companies, trusts, and financial structures designed to conceal ownership and obscure financial trails. Over decades, Mossack Fonseca became the go-to destination for the ultra-wealthy and powerful individuals seeking secrecy, often exploiting loopholes in international law. Their clients included some of the world's richest and most influential people who could shape politics, business, and economies. And here, a central character emerges: Ramon Fonseca, the lawyer who spent decades selling secrecy to the elite, while publicly claiming everything was perfectly legal. He became the face of a system built to hide what the world was never meant to see. But Mossack Fonseca was only the doorway. The real network hiding behind it was far bigger than anyone imagined. The magnitude of the leak is staggering. Over 11.5 million documents spanning decades revealed nearly 214,000 offshore entities linked to individuals in more than 200 countries. The files contained emails, contracts, financial statements, and internal communications, providing an unprecedented view into the hidden operations of global finance. The sheer scale of secrecy and complexity astonished investigators and journalists. And the deeper they dug, the more they realized this. What the world saw was only the surface layer of a system even more threatening beneath. This wasn't just a leak. It was the first crack in an empire billions were built to protect. One of the most shocking revelations was the involvement of political leaders and public officials. Heads of state, ministers, and close associates appeared in the documents, holding assets in secret accounts while often publicly promoting policies against corruption or tax evasion. This contradiction sparked outrage worldwide, exposing the hypocrisy of leaders who publicly championed transparency while secretly participating in opaque financial dealings. Because when leaders hide money offshore, they aren't just breaking trust, they're rewriting the rules for everyone else. And what the public still doesn't know is how many of them were never named. The leak also exposed the role of financial institutions, banks, and professional intermediaries. Many banks facilitated offshore accounts, knowingly or unknowingly aiding in secrecy. Law firms and accountants helped design elaborate structures to conceal true ownership, creating layers upon layers of complexity. These practices allowed the wealthy to avoid scrutiny, shield assets from tax authorities, and move money across borders with minimal oversight. And what no government admitted publicly was this: the system worked so well because powerful institutions helped build it. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe, because what comes next is the part of the Panama Papers that governments, banks, and even the investigators themselves hoped you would never hear. The next chapter exposes what was never written in the documents, and it's far more alarming than the leak itself. Offshore structures, while legal in many cases, were often used to skirt the spirit of the law. Shell companies allowed individuals to hide ownership of real estate, yachts, private jets, and corporate shares. This secrecy enabled tax avoidance on a massive scale, depriving governments of revenues needed for public services, infrastructure, and social programs. The Panama Papers brought attention to how the global elite could exploit legal systems, often in ways that were ethical gray zones, if not outright illegal. It forced a reckoning on the ethics of wealth accumulation and the responsibility of those with power and influence. But again, what the public doesn't know is how many of these structures were recreated even after being exposed. The global impact was immediate and dramatic. High-profile resignations followed in several countries, from ministers to heads of state. Investigations were launched into financial misconduct, asset concealment, and potential money laundering. Banks faced scrutiny for their roles, prompting regulatory reforms and increased transparency measures. Even celebrities and sports stars were not spared, as their offshore dealings made headlines. The Panama Papers forced a worldwide conversation about inequality, accountability, and the mechanisms that allow wealth and power to operate beyond public oversight. But what no one expected was how quickly the story would be buried, and who had the most to gain from burying it. One of the lesser-known aspects of the Panama Papers is the human element behind the leak. The documents were obtained by an anonymous source who contacted journalists at the German newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung. The files were then shared with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ICIJ, which coordinated a global investigation with over 400 journalists in nearly 80 countries. Their painstaking work involved verifying documents, tracking ownership chains, and connecting dots across continents. The effort demonstrated the power of collaborative journalism in uncovering systemic corruption that operates in secrecy. But here's the scandalous truth. Even the journalists knew there were names they couldn't publish, names protected by entire governments. The Panama Papers also highlighted the technological and legal sophistication required to maintain secrecy in offshore finance. Complex chains of ownership, often spanning multiple jurisdictions, created near impenetrable barriers to transparency. This meant that even regulators and law enforcement faced enormous challenges in tracing assets or holding individuals accountable. It became evident that the global financial system, while interconnected, allowed powerful actors to exploit loopholes, jurisdictional gaps, and secrecy laws to maintain wealth and influence. The revelations prompted public outrage, sparking protests, debates, and calls for reform in multiple countries. Citizens demanded accountability, stricter regulations, and international cooperation to prevent tax evasion and corruption. Governments implemented new reporting standards, transparency requirements, and sanctions aimed at closing loopholes. Yet, while the Panama Papers brought global attention to the issue, the systemic nature of offshore finance meant that the structures enabling secrecy were not easily dismantled. Powerful interests, legal protections, and global inequalities continue to allow some of these practices to persist. What the public doesn't see is how many of these structures are still active, just hidden behind new names, new jurisdictions, and new legal shields. The leak also raised ethical questions for corporations and individuals operating in the financial world. While offshore accounts are not inherently illegal, their use for evasion, concealment, or laundering money crosses ethical boundaries. The Panama Papers forced a public conversation about the responsibility of wealthy individuals, corporations, and intermediaries in contributing to inequality, undermining public trust, and exploiting legal frameworks. It highlighted the tension between legal compliance and moral responsibility in the modern global economy. The Panama Papers story is also a stark illustration of globalization's double-edged sword. In a world where capital moves freely across borders, the wealthy can exploit gaps between jurisdictions to protect their assets and avoid oversight. While globalization has created immense economic opportunities, it has also enabled the concentration of wealth, inequality, and corruption on an unprecedented scale. The documents revealed not just individual wrongdoing, but the structural features of a global financial system that allows secrecy and exploitation to flourish. The untold truth of the Panama Papers is that corruption is rarely isolated. It is embedded in networks, institutions, and systems designed to protect wealth. Politicians, business leaders, banks, and law firms all played roles in maintaining secrecy. The scandal exposed how power operates invisibly, how wealth can be insulated from scrutiny, and how ordinary citizens often bear the burden of a system that allows the few to operate beyond the law. Understanding this network is key to understanding why inequality persists and why accountability is so difficult to enforce. Despite the global exposure, the Panama Papers show that the battle against secrecy and corruption is far from over. Governments and regulatory bodies continue to face challenges in monitoring offshore finance, tracking hidden assets, and enforcing laws across borders. While reforms have been implemented, loopholes remain, and sophisticated actors continue to exploit them. The lessons of the Panama Papers underscore the need for vigilance, transparency, and global cooperation to prevent similar abuses in the future. So, what can we take away from the Panama Papers? First, transparency is essential to holding power accountable. Second, systemic corruption often relies on complex structures, making it difficult for the public and regulators to identify wrongdoing. Third, collaboration, whether among journalists, governments, or watchdog organizations, is key to exposing hidden networks. And finally, the scandal highlights a broader truth. The modern global economy, while interconnected and prosperous, can also conceal astonishing levels of secrecy, manipulation, and inequality. The Panama Papers are not just a story about hidden wealth. They are a story about power, influence, and the global systems that allow corruption to flourish. The documents revealed how billions of dollars could move in secret, hidden behind layers of legal structures and opaque jurisdictions. They demonstrated the challenges of enforcing accountability in a globalized world and exposed the vast networks through which the powerful protect and expand their wealth. This was Wealth Nexus, where we expose the hidden empires shaping your financial reality. Subscribe, because our next investigation uncovers what the public still doesn't know about a system even more threatening than the Panama Papers and far from dead.